Hi everybody. I'm going to go on live a little early. Facebook's been having some issues with comments and such, so I need to see if I can be able to see your comments tonight without a second computer. So I'm going to type something and see if you can see it, hopefully, and I'm going to go get on my other computer so that I can see them in case I can't see them on the first computer. Let's see here. I need to see if I can be able to see. All right. So, can everybody hear me so far? Are you hearing me okay? Hi, Lori. Oh gosh, there's all kinds of people. Hi, Shelly. Hi, Garnet. So is everybody hearing me and seeing me okay? I have two computers. On because Facebook has been having issues with comments, but I think it's been fixed because I can see your comments on my regular computer. So I might be able to get rid of my tablet. I just wasn't sure. Hi, Janice. Hi. Oh, Peggy. And Lynn. Hello. Who else is here? All kinds of people. My goodness. Kathy. Hi, Kathy. Probably Orland's there too. And yeah, so evidently Facebook must have gotten their issue fixed with the comments, because the person last week, my friend Connie, was trying to do a class, and the person doing the presentation could not see or type any comments to anybody. So she said, you better have your tablet there just in case, but I can see them tonight. So I might just leave the tablet up here though, because I can look at it on the other side of the table here. So how is everybody? What a beautiful day. Hasn't it been beautiful? Oh, hi Pat. Hi Karen. Hi Deb. There's two Debs. Oh, Judy made it. Hi Judy. Yep, Kathy and Orland are here, I betcha. And Teresa. Oh, Teresa, I think was the first person. So is everybody ready to learn how to put this quilt together? It's actually kind of fun to put together. It is a little bit tedious. There's a lot of blocks. But if you just take your time, and I just kind of been doing one row at a time, and then it doesn't seem so bad. You know, in the past when I've done this, I've had to put like the entire quilt together in a really short amount of time. So it's been kind of fun to do it just one row at a time. So, yep, hi Deb, hi Pat. Yep, there's all kinds of folks here. So yeah, so I went up and saw my dad today, and it was such a nice day coming home. I almost got too warm in the car. had to turn the air on and get some cool air in the car on the way home. So we're going to put together the I'm going to show you how to do the sashing method tonight. We'll wait just a few more minutes till people kind of find us. I think oh good, it looks like everything's coming through on my tablet over here too, so we're good. I always have to turn off the sound on it so that I can just see the comments. Oh, hi Clara. So we got people coming in yet, so we'll wait a few more minutes before we start. I don't like to start too early to give people a chance to find the video, because sometimes like the notifications, are you guys getting the little notification that the video started on your, like, you know, the little bell up in the top of your Facebook page? Are you getting that notification that it's there? Hi Mitzi. Hi Jan. Yeah, so some people don't get that, and sometimes it doesn't come through for a few minutes because it takes a little bit for it to, there's like a delay, you know, when you start a live video, so they don't always come through very well. But yeah, at least I can see the comments tonight. I'll let Connie know. Hopefully Wednesday she'll be able to do her live video or her live class without oh, did you get yours, Lori? Good. Deb got one? Good. Some people do, some people don't. So if you just go to the group and nope, Lynn didn't get any, Denise got one. So I don't know why, it's random. I don't know why, but if you just go to the group about this time and you just keep refreshing the page, it'll come up, the video will come up. So, okay, good. All right, so let's go ahead. It's about 5 after 6, so let's get started. So what we're going to do tonight is we're going to put together this the starting over the center of the quilt. So this is a sashing method, and the sashing assembly instructions are in the book. And I'm going to put I think I'm going to move my camera. Give me a second here. I want it on the other side, so because we're going to do a lot of ironing and stuff tonight, so you need to be able to see really well over here. So we'll just move the whole camera right now and get that done. I don't have quite enough. I have to move it from one side to the other because it just isn't quite. You can't see well enough from on the other side of my machine there. All right, just a second here. Get it tight enough so it won't pop off. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to put this up. You're probably seeing my PR over there. Second here, I got to get this just a little bit tighter so it won't move. Okay. You have to just kind of move around. Whoop, now you're seeing the ceiling. Sorry, guys. Okay. I got to get it turned around so we can see the sewing machine and stuff here. Okay. All right, so we're going to talk a little bit about the instructions here. So what I'm doing is I'm starting with, I'm going to scroll up so I can see if there's been people seeing me. There is, in your book, there is a whole section on assembling the body of the quilt. And what this is called is a sashing. So we're going to do a sashing method. And you're going to, and this quilt is put together on point. Because as you can see, we're going to work corner to corner. So like the rows are going to go this way instead of straight across this way. They're going from the corner. Okay. If you look on page, I always have to find it. It's on page 12 of the book. I put the letters of the rows on here for you. So like row A was up here, and then row B. Okay, row C, and so on, like this. Okay, the ones that I'm going to put together tonight for you, I've got all of my top half done, row through row J. So I'm going to go down here to row T. I started down here because I needed some shorter rows to show you how to put it together, so we didn't have to put together like rows with 18 blocks in it. So these rows are the ones I'm going to do. So I'm going to be doing T and S tonight, so you can see how I put these together. And then as you get longer, as you can see, obviously there's more blocks in there, and it takes a little longer as you get up towards the middle. But then again, then it starts working down again as you're going towards the bottom. So it's not so bad. It is a little tedious in the center because there's a lot of blocks in these center 4 rows in here. Okay. So what we're going to do is I'm going to show you how to sash these together. The sashing instructions then start on page, I find it, sorry. Start on page 7 of the book. And I have step-by-step instructions here too with close-up pictures that I took. So you can see how to do the actual sashing method. So the sashing is going to be, we're going to sash a row together first, and then we're going to sash the rows together to make the quilt. And then I'll also go over and grab I've got the other part of the quilt almost half done. So I will grab it so you can see how big it is getting now. And I've got 2 more rows to put on for the top half to be done. Okay, so this is the instructions. So if you need to look at your book while I'm working at this, it might help you. Then you'd see a little closer up picture as well as the written out instructions. Okay, so this is what we're doing is the sashing method tonight. All right, so I'm going to get my picture up here. Remember that picture on page 12? That helps me know what orientation I need my blocks. So I get them, I usually put them together, in the order I put them in the quilt. You don't have to do that. You can put them in any order you want. But I've been putting them together like this so you can see the sample with the actual, block order I originally did it in. So I have done one row already. I pre-sewed a row so that I can sew just one row together for you, and then I can sew the 2 rows together to show you that sashing. So here's my first row I just did a little bit ago. Okay, so this is row S. So this is the second to the last row. And it had started with a triangle, okay, and then I have 2 pieced blocks in it, 1 of the Celtic circles, and then there's a triangle on the other end. So what's important, as you can see here in this picture, you need to pay attention to the orientation of these triangle blocks so that they're going the right direction. So I always lay it on the book to make sure I've got it going the right direction, okay? So here are my 2 triangles, my 2 piece blocks, and then this Celtic circle in the center. Okay, so the one that we're going to do tonight in class is the first row, which is this row T. Now this one has 2 triangles, only 1 piece block. All right, so this is my piece block, and then my triangles, as you can see, I have to look at the orientation. The triangles are going to go like this, so the straight sides are together. And I'm going to lay my piece block in the center like this, and then this one is going to go over here. Okay, so that's the way these blocks need to be. Now the first thing I do when I'm working with these triangles, because there's a triangle basically on each end of each row. All right, so what I do is I like to make sure I have my orientation, so I always look at my book, and I lay the straight of the row, because this is the top of the row right here. I like to lay that, and then I like to nip these little tips off so that they're not sticking out like that, because it kind of gets in my way when I'm putting these together. So I'm just going to lay these like this, and I'm just going to nip these little tips off so I know where the bottoms are. So this is the bottoms, so I'm just going to lay these over here on my table, and here's my piece block. Okay. So the first step of this, and give me a second, let me get this camera down just a little bit further so you can see better. It's harder for me to sew with it over here because it's in my way, but see if there's any comments. I'm trying to keep track of everybody here. All right. So I also am going to look at my book and see which direction I had my block going. I think I had it going this way. Okay, so I want this block to be this way. I'm just going to set it over here for a minute. The first step of this, you have to have all these little 1-inch strips of your sashing fabric. Okay, these are 1-inch strips. I like to cut these with my my Sizzix cutter because I'm really bad at cutting strips. You do want them to be as accurate as possible, because if your strips are too wide or too narrow, everything's not going to match up well. Okay, so try to keep these as accurate as possible. So I usually cut these out with my Sizzix machine. And I'm going to grab my first block. Now the first block of this quilt row is a triangle. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to lay one of my 1-inch strips on the bottom of the block with the right sides together. And then I'm going to lay a 1-inch strip on the top with the right sides together. So all the right sides are together like this. And I'm sandwiching the block between these 2 strips. So this is the first step. And give me a second here. I'm just going to put a little clip on here so I won't lose it, because I want to show you something on the machine. Okay. Then I'm going to go over here, hoping you kind of see my machine over here. I'm going to go over to the Q tab, and I want to use a 1/4-inch seam. So all these seams are 1/4 inch, okay? And I'm going to use a 1/4 inch piecing stitch. The reason I like this piecing stitch for this especially is pretty soon I have to zigzag, and then I don't have to take my foot on and off. All right, so I'm going to use Q02. Q02 is going to move the needle to the right hand position so that when I run my fabric along the right edge of my foot, it'll be a 1/4 inch. Because I'm going to have to zigzag in a little bit, and I don't want to have to remove the foot to put, if I had a 1/4 inch piecing foot, then I'd have to remove the foot to zigzag. This one I can zigzag with. So I have my block sandwiched between these two 1-inch strips. I'm going to sew my 1/4 inch seam. Give me a second here. I haven't quite got it lined up. And you want these to be as accurate as possible. And your 1/4 inch seams should be somewhat scant. I usually do a kind of a scant 1/4 inch, and what I do is I run my fabric right along the edge of my foot, but I just tuck it under the edge of it. So it's not sticking out, but it's just tucked underneath. And that's a nice, kind of a nice scant 1/4 inch. And I'm going to sew down. Take this clip off now. And I'm going to make sure that my strips are even. I think this one's kind of poking out a little bit, so there we go. And I'm trying to keep my 1/4 inch seam, and the trick with doing this is to keep your 1/4 inch seam as accurate as possible, because these are pretty close. You know, you got a 1-inch strip, and it's going to end up being a 1/2 inch strip when we're done with this. So I'm just going to trim this off, and now I've got this block with these two little flippers on it. All right, so here's the bottom one, and then there's the top one. The top one we're not going to sew yet. We're going to do that differently, and I'll show you that in a minute. We're going to sew the second block of the row, which is this pieced one. Make sure I'm laying it correctly. Yep. This one is going to be sewn to the back strip, not the top one, the back one. So to do that, you're going to take your block. I'm going to pull this camera back just a little bit so you can see my hands better. You're going to take it, so I have it laid out here. Here's my strip, and this is the way I always taught everybody. Lay your strip out so you can see that strip on the back, and take your block, and we're going to put the right sides together. This is the right side of the strip right here, right? So I'm going to take my block, and I'm going to lay it right sides together like this. And I want the top of that triangle or the block next to it to match up, to be flush. And here's the strip sticking out, but I've got the right side. This is the back of the block, but it's the right side, and I want the right side of the strip next to it. And I'm going to line that up and make sure the tops are flush up here, and then I'm going to put a pin in here. And I usually do pins instead of clips on these because they seem to work better. And I'm just going to put one pin in there. Okay, then I'm going to sew a 1/4 inch seam along here, and that will put the next block on. I'm going to 1/4 inch seam. Again, I'm trying to keep it a little bit on the scant side. And I've got an extra row here if you need me to do this a couple more times. Excuse me. I have a lot of dust in here right now because I've been working with batting, and I've got a fan running because it's warm in here. Okay, so I have this seam. This is the block. Then, see, they're sewn on the back. I pull this out like that. And there's the two blocks are now together. That we cut, when we trimmed these, remember we left 1/4 inch through all layers along here, and then that batting, those two lines just come together, and you never even know that there's not batting in there. Or there's two pieces in there, because the batting comes right and butts right up together. Okay? So, once you've done one block like that, then you start with the next one. So I did the sandwiching on the first block, and I sewed the second block onto the back strip and flipped it over. Then I have to start out with a sandwich again. So I'm going to get my strips, my 1-inch strip. This is the right side. And lots of times what I do is, this is a long strip. I just fold it. So I'm going to lay this on here. This is the back. The right sides are together. I'm going to pull this around. The right sides are together. So here's the sandwich, like that. Okay. And again, I'm going to sew a 1/4 inch seam. Trying to keep it pretty scant. If it's not enough, you'll know because all the lines on the blocks will show. But the trick is to keep it just right, a good accurate 1/4 inch seam. Okay, I'm going to put my sandwich there. Then I'm going to sew my 1/4 inch seam. Okay, I'm going to cut, and then I'm going to just trim this off. I like to leave a little bit at the top and a little bit at the bottom because we can trim it off later. It's nice to have a little extra. Okay, so here's the 2 pieces again, like this. Okay, we're not going to worry about the top one right now. We're worrying about the bottom one. So I'm going to pull it out like that. And then here's my next block. The next block is another triangle in this row. So I'm going to lay it in the orientation I need it because I want to make sure this top edge and this top edge are even. Okay. Just watching. Oh my gosh, all kinds of people have come in. So I'm going to kind of line these up so I know where they're going, but remember, we're going to sew it to the back. So I'm going to take this and flip it up like this. We've got the right sides together. Here's the right side of that strip. I want to look at it. Make sure that my top of this one is very lined up. Okay, and then we're going to, whoops, put a pin in here. And like I said, if you need me to do this a couple more times, I have another row. We can put another whole row together. Okay, then I'm going to stitch my 1/4 inch seam along here. And I know I'm a really bad girl. I use these super, super, super thin pins that I sew over the pin because if I take it out, everything scooches on me. So I sew very slowly over that very skinny, skinny pin. Okay, there's my other seam. We're going to take this and flip it open. And there's a whole row. Done. Okay, now we got to do something with this though, right? This stuff here needs to be closed, and we don't want to see all these raw edges. So the back looks beautiful. See, we got the 2 backs done. Okay, so they're all sewn together. So now what we're going to do is we have to do some ironing, and this is if you know nothing else about this, ironing is very important when we do this kind of stuff. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come over here to the ironing table. Give me a second here. Move the camera over here, and I'm going to show you, we're going to do some ironing. If I can get the camera to move. My camera is very touchy tonight. Okay, so here's my ironing table. So we have our row, and I do the ironing in about 3 steps. Going to make sure you can see what I'm doing here. Okay, I do this ironing in 3 steps. I have this laid flat, but the first thing I want to do is make sure that these raw edges are nice and flat on here, because it also kind of irons down then the back strip. It makes it nice and straight. So I am going to, this is my favorite iron to do this. It's that Eurosteam Evolution. I told everybody I was revving up my iron. So this is my favorite iron to do this because it makes everything very flat. I'm going to give it a little steam. And the first step is I'm going to iron these raw edges nice and flat. Like that. So they're nice and beautifully flat now. Then the second step is I'm going to take the strip that's free and I'm going to flip it up and I'm going to kind of finger press it up so it's flat, and then I'm going to iron it down nice and flat because I want a nice crease right here. Hoping you'll be able to see me. I want a nice crease right here. Okay. Then I'm going to take this strip and do the same thing. I'm going to finger press it up. And then I'm going to press it down so I have a nice crease along that edge right here. Okay, so that's step number 2. Then the third step for the ironing will be, I'm going to fold my strip back, and I need to have a 1/4 inch folded in. So when I'm looking at my strip, remember this was a 1 inch strip, so I need my 1/4 inch to be, you know, about halfway in to the stitching line. And I'm going to just turn it over like this, and I'm going to kind of finger press it in so it kind of stays for me, and then I'm going to give this a good press. And I have learned doing these, I put a lot of these quilts together like this. If I don't iron on each part of this every step of this, it will not lay flat, and you can't get your strips nice and flat. So ironing is very, very important. This iron does probably the best of any of the irons, and I'll tell you a couple reasons why. If you want it flat, this iron has 50 pounds of pressure. This is a Eurosteam Evolution iron. It's a boiler iron. And it has, so I'm going to do the second strip here. If you want something flat, this will give you, it will be flat because there's 50 pounds of pressure when you push this little button here. I don't know if you can see my button, the little button right here. When I push that, it shoots steam out. And the other thing is the iron is not so hot. So when I'm down here working with my fingers close to the hot iron, it's not, the steam only comes out of one place instead of everywhere, and I don't have to scorch my fingers to do this. So this works out really well. So there I have now my steps. All my ironing steps are done. When you're doing a long row, it takes a little while to do all the ironing. Okay? So like the last row I did had about 20 blocks in it. So it took me a little while to iron it, but that is very, very important to do. Okay? So don't skip on the ironing part. All right, so now the next piece is that we need to get this to go over here like this because we want it to be beautiful on both sides, right? So there's this wonderful tape, and they changed the name of it, just so you know. I have it at the store. It used to be Collins Wash Away Wonder Tape, and evidently somewhere along the line, I believe Dritz purchased Collins, and now they have Wash Away Wonder Tape, but it's under the Dritz name. Dritz also has another 1/4 inch quilting tape that I don't care for. It turns yellow, but this stuff does not bother you. It doesn't gum up your needle. It doesn't bother when you're sewing. It doesn't make you skip stitches. This stuff works very, very well. But now it's called Dritz Wash Away Wonder Tape. It still says Wash Away Wonder Tape, and I have it at the store. I'm going to order some more because if some of you are doing this, you're going to need quite a few rolls, and I can't remember how many I said at the beginning. There's several. Let's see, Wash Away, 6 to 8 rolls of Wash Away Wonder Tape. So I know that I went through quite a bit of this. So I know I used at least 6 rolls of it. So I'm going to order more. It's like, I don't know, $6.50 or $6.95 a roll now. But it just says, now it just says Dritz on it instead of Collins. I had some Collins left. They must have been fairly recently that happened. Okay, so I'm going to take this tape. This is double sticky tape. It's 1/4 inch wide. And I'm going to take that and I want to stick it onto the 1/4 inch seam allowance that I have right here. Okay, so I'm going to take, oops, I got to find the end of it. I'm going to put this onto my seam allowance is where I'm putting it. And I want to stay inside, you know, the stitching line. And I'm going to trim this off. So I've got, so that there's still a piece of paper over there, so there's another piece that I'll take off. I'm going to do the same thing on this one. This really helps. I've tried doing this with glue stick and different things, but the tape just works so well, and then it stays put while you're trying to work with it. Okay, so there are the tape, and we're ready to turn this over. I'm just trying to make sure there's no comments that I need to answer. Okay, so I'm going to take the second piece of tape off of this now. Give me a second here. I always got to, you kind of stick your fingernail from the underneath and then pull it off. It works pretty well. Then I'm going to make sure everything's lined up, and I'm going to take this piece, and I usually start in the center and I work towards the center, and I want that little strip to just go right over my stitching line and stick it down. Okay, Then I take the iron and I just give it another little shot with the iron, and then I'm going to go do the other one. And I do this for each one. Like I said, some of these rows have a lot of blocks, so it does take a little while. And I always start with the center. So I go up to the center, pull it up, and I'm going to cover up that little line like that. I'm going to get it all stuck down, and then I'm going to give it another shot with the iron. Sometimes I don't use the steam when I do this part. I just need to iron it down because it sticks better if I just shoot it with the iron. So, okay? So then there are the two strips down the front, and of course the back ones were sewn. Okay? But we have another step to do yet before we finish this row. We need to take it back to the sewing machine, and I'm going to have to move the camera again, so I apologize. Get it to turn here. Get to look at my head. I don't know why it's so hard to move tonight, but it's just being contrary, I guess. Okay. Then we need to, what I've been using is a zigzag stitch, and I like to zigzag the side. So this was the orientation I had it. I like to zigzag the side that's open first, the one that we just taped down. I like to zigzag that one down to the quilt first before I zigzag the other line, because that way everything's is closed right away. So I want to use a zigzag stitch. I'm going to go back to my machine here. I'm going to go back to tab number 1, and I'm going to use 1-10, my zigzag. And I want it to be at the default settings of the machine. That's my favorite size. It was just kind of not real super wide and not super long. So I'm going to hit on my machine. I don't know if you can see this very well. I'm going to get a little closer. On my machine, I have some preset things in here. Like this is my rug zigzag width that I like to use. So it comes up because that was the last one I made. And if I want to reset it to the default settings, I'm just going to hit this little reset button. And now this is the default setting. See the black boxes? So 3.5 is the width and 1.4 is the length. Okay, so that's the size that I want to use for my zigzagging on these strips. So I'm going to go back here to the machine. And again, this is the open side over here. So I want to start by stitching that open side shut. And what I'm doing, and let me see if I take my foot off, maybe you can see this. There is a little notch right in the middle of the foot, right here. Can you see where my thumbnail is? There's a notch there, and I'm going to lay that notch, that's like the center needle position, I'm going to lay that notch right on the edge of this strip so that I keep my zigzag stitches consistent from strip to strip. Okay, so I'll put this back on. Except I need to find the end of my thread. Where'd it go? There it is. Okay. I am going to lay that mark right on the edge, right here, on the edge of this strip. All right. I'm going to drop my needle, and now I'm going to zigzag all the way down to the other end. And I'm going to leave that mark right on the very edge of the strip. And I found the setting just seems to work pretty well, so I've just always used it. So now that's the first one, okay? And then we're going to do the other. I want to go on and do the other ones that are open. So I usually go down the whole row and I do all the open sides first, and then we'll flip it over and we'll do the closed sides. Because if you put the zigzags on both sides, you never know which one was open and which one was closed. Okay, so I'm going to zigzag. Now what I'm using for thread on my quilt. My quilt was had a really light gray sashing, so I happened to have some nice cotton thread that was just the right color, so it's very matchy. Normally when I've done these, I've actually used my embroidery thread, so whichever works better for you. It's fine to use embroidery thread to sew these together. If you wanted to match your sashing, or if you had a special color you were using, that's perfectly fine. I like my zigzagging generally to be matching to my sashing. I don't want it to stand out from the sashing. You can do that, but if it does, just be aware that, you know, you'll have to be very careful to keep everything very consistent then. So I like my zigzagging to be matchy with my sashing, so if I make a boo-boo, it doesn't really show very much. So that's what I did, but this happens to be a cotton thread on this one. So I've got that open edge right on the little center notch of my foot. I'm going to drop my needle and we're going to zigzag to the other end. Okay. Then we're going to cut. I'm just trying to see if there's any questions. Okay, so now both open sides are closed with the zigzag stitch. Then I'm going to flip this over and work from the same direction. These are the closed sides, but I want to zigzag those too so that they look the same on both sides. So I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to leave that little notch right on the edge of my strip. I'm going to drop my needle and I'm going to zigzag to the other end. So what I did last night is I put 3 rows together, and I'll show you the rows I did. They were really long ones. They were all the middle ones. Oh, it doesn't matter, Denise. That's right. We've used the serpentine stitch too. Whichever stitch works better for you. I've used just the zigzag on the last few that I've done. The serpentine stitch is also very good. I use the serpentine most of the time when I'm putting them together the way we'll do the borders. Most of the time when I'm doing the sashing, I think I've used a zigzag stitch. But whatever works for you. If you want a serpentine, you can use the serpentine. Okay? Serpentine stitch is very nice, and it is, but the one thing about the serpentine with these sashing strips, the serpentine would have to be fairly small so that you wouldn't have any gaps in your serpentine stitch. The original quilt that we did like this, one of the Hoop Sisters quilts long time ago, they suggested the serpentine, but most of my quilts, I know starting over, I've always done with a zigzag in here. So, okay. So but serpentine would be another option. All right, so we're going to go down this other side. And if you've been accurate on your 1/4 inch seams, when I turn this over, hopefully you'll be able to see it. When I turn this over, my zigzag stitches are going to look even on both sides on the back as well, so that you can see how important it is to have your seams be very accurate, because otherwise things, and so we have a 1/2 inch, so we end up with a 1/2 inch sashing strip in here. Lori says she likes the zigzag too. Yeah, this just seems to work better. The zigzag's a little closer together than the serpentine, so you don't have the chance of maybe having a spot that's gaping open. So that's why I usually use the zigzag here. But the serpentine we will actually use next time to put the borders together, because I do use the serpentine stitch there. Okay, so I have both sides done. Okay, it's all zigzag together. What do you think? Then you can do this 2 different ways. You know, we've got these little, now I'm going to look at my edges. Remember, some of those edges were open. I'm going to look, and if you happen to have an edge that's just a little bit wonky, if you take your fingernail, you can kind of straighten it out. And I had one that looked a little crooked to me. So I usually will do that. I'll just check my set and sides to see that they're straight. And if they look a little wonky, I'll just take my fingernail and I will straighten them out. Okay? Now this one, you can do this either way that works for you. I personally am usually sitting at the sewing machine, so I grab my little scissors and I snip these little tails off straight. And you can go up and use your rotary cutter, whichever works for you. Okay, we're going to do both sides so they're nice and straight then. So when we go to put this together with the next row, it makes it easy. Okay, and here's this one. Okay, get those trimmed off. All right, so this is the row. This is row number 1, actually. There is actually sort of row number 2. But, sorry, I'm trying to keep track of the comments because I've got 2 computers going here. This is sort of row number 2 because on the corner, the bottom corners of the quilt, we have this little triangle to put on here, like this. So I want to put this little triangle on the bottom here, and then I'm going to put another row up here. Okay? So the first thing I want to ask everybody, though, do you need me to do a couple more blocks so you can see the sashing method again, or are you comfortable with it? Are you okay? Send me some thumbs ups if you're okay. Or if you need me, otherwise comment and say I need you to do it again. Because then I'll move on to sashing the rows together. Okay? If you're okay, send me some thumbs ups. Does that make sense to everybody how to do that? And I have it all written out in the book with pictures. So you should be able to really look at the pictures and go step by step with the book. Okay? Okay, everybody's okay? All right, so we're going to move on to putting the rows together. So what I did, I usually choose which way I want all the open. Oh boy, everybody's really okay. You got lots of thumbs up. I usually pick which way I want my openings to be, which direction, and I try to keep them going the same direction through the whole quilt. Okay? So I started at the top of the quilt, and I've got it about half done now, and I made my open sides towards the bottom, which is here. So I'm going to sew my strips on here to attach this row this direction. So the opening will be at the bottom. So I usually try, you can do it the other way, but I have a tendency to try to keep them all going the same direction. I think it's a little more consistent. So I want to put this row to this row, because this is actually a row. This is that little tiny corner piece. We got to put it on. So we're going to do the same thing. We have to start with a sandwich of the 3 pieces. So I'm going to turn this aside, and I'm going to take my 1-inch strips, and this time I'm going to put it on the bottom of the row. This is just 1 strip, so I'm just going to flip this up so I can just use 1 strip, and you can use 2 if you want. And make sure you have a little extra on the ends. There's a corner here, so you need to have a little extra on the end. All right, so I'm going to do that. Now these, I usually will put either a pin or a clip in because they're a little longer, and then I don't always get a hold of them really well. So I'm going to put a clip in this one, get everything lined up. Then I'm going to go back to my Q tab, and I'm going to go back to Q02. That's my 1/4 inch piecing stitch, so I can use my J-foot. And then I am going to line up the right side of my foot, and I've been using the J-foot the whole time. I forgot to mention that. That's the foot I've been using, just the standard J-foot. Then I'm going to sew a 1/4 inch seam. I tend to have a tendency to use, for the length of the stitch, 2.5. Seems to work pretty well for me. I'm going to make sure all these sashing strips, all the right sides are together. They're all lined up. Second here. And off the end. Okay. I'm going to cut. And I'm just going to trim this off and get it out of my way. So just choose which way you want your open sides to be. So like I wanted them to be down towards the bottom. So this is the bottom piece right here. Okay. Now when you do these triangles, they're a little bit harder. You have to kind of fold your block in half. So I take my block, find my ends here like this, kind of get my center of my block. Put a little pin in there. So I have my center of my block, okay? And then I want to do the same thing with my little triangle, because we need to make sure this is straight and not off to the side or something. So I'll put a little pin in my block here, so I know where I'm at. I'm going to turn this pin though this way, so I kind of know where the center is right there. Okay. Then remember how we did the other blocks. We have to get that the back sashing strip and pull it out like this. And then this is the top of my little triangle. We need to put the right sides together, but it's going to be the back of the block. So I'm going to tip it over like this. And I'm going to try to find the center of that pin. So I know I got my little triangle center. This one's a little tricky because sometimes they like to get off kilter on me. Okay. Take that other pin out of there. Then I'm going to do the same thing I did before, but this just happens to be a triangle. So I'm going to go down here. I'm going to line up my foot and do my 1/4 inch seam. Make sure this is not crooked down here. Okay, and then we're going to trim. And then I'll take this pin out. Don't go over those pins very fast. I know you should be pulling them out, but everything gets wonky on me. All right, so there is a row. Same thing. And then this is the strip. And we're going to do the ironing again here in a minute, okay? But I want to do this other row. So I want these two pieces to go on the row I already prepared. So this row is row S. This is T. And this was row S. So I'll put this up here so you can see it. This one has 2 piece blocks in it and 1 Celtic circle. I'm going to move this before I have the pins all over the floor, because that's what always happens to me. Okay? So we need to start though with our sandwich, right? We need to have a sandwich. Well, I want my open side to be this direction. So I'm going to put the sandwich on row S up here. Okay? So I'm going to move this one out of the way for a minute. This is the side I'm going to put it on. And I'm going to grab 2 strips. Actually, this might be short enough. I can do just one and fold it in half. Okay, so we're going to, this is 1 full strip, the width of the fabric. I'm going to put this up here. Now these I usually clip, because otherwise everything goes wonky on me. So I'm going to get this kind of started. Second, I got to pull my hands back so I can get this started, and I need some clips. So my clips are over here on the side now. So I'm going to put a couple clips in here. So what I'm doing, I'm just lining this up, okay? And what I have a tendency to do when I do the rows like this, I like to kind of get my strips organized, and then I clip at where the block junctions are. Gives me something to kind of hang on to. And I can go across here. This is the bottom, and this is the top. Again, right sides are together. So basically, you're just sashing really big blocks together, which we call rows. So you do all the rows, the rows first, and I'll just do them one at a time. I've been putting this together like 1 row at a time. Seems to work pretty well. Here's another block junction. But just be watching your picture on page 12, because it gives you the orientation of each row. And that, each row will have a different number of blocks, and it may have a triangle. Like the one I'm just about to put on has another one of these little triangles on it, because it's like the top right-hand corner of the quilt, but I'm putting it together on point, so it has one of these little blocks on it too. So this is the bottom right-hand corner right now. All right, so I got these lined up. I'm going to take this clip out of here. Make sure everything's lined up, and we're going to do our 1/4 inch seam here. All right, so across we go. We're going to go 1/4 inch. Keep your seams accurate. Clip off. The clips work really well. I found that the clips don't work as well when I go to put this next row on, and you'll see why. I like the pin for that, but it works well for this. They don't hold well enough. They like to pop off on me. I use these clips a lot though. Oops. All right. Get that all lined up. So I'm not going to lie to you, this gets a little tedious as you get to these long rows. I'm working on the 4 big long rows right now, and it takes a while to do this. Okay, so we're going to trim this off on the end here. Just leave some extra over here. Just leave a little extra. Get this piece out of my way for a minute. All right, so here is the open, and again, the opening is going towards the bottom of the quilt. That's the way I had started it, and I'm going to keep going that direction. And if you want to go the other direction, that's fine, whichever works for you, okay? Then I'm going to lay this sideways, and I'm going to pull out that, actually let's do it up and down like this. I think it'll be easier for you to see. Okay, so I'm going to pull this out, and I might move over to the cutting table or the ironing table for a minute here to do this. So the problem is when we get to these, when we do these, we want these rows, you know, we want these to look seamless so that they're all lined up. So the trick is when you go to pin these together, we got to make sure that all of these are lining up too. Okay, so let's go over here to the ironing table. I think you'll be able to see it a little better if I put it over here. So just a second, move this around for you, and then we'll sew again. Hopefully I'm not making everybody seasick by moving the camera. All right. So when I do these, I like to lay it, get my tape out of the way here. I like to lay it down with the strips sticking out. And then I lay this block, hopefully you can see okay. I like to lay this block so that I know I'm ready to flip it up. And remember, we got to flip it up so that the back of this piece is to the right side of this strip. However, when we flip this over like this, I'm going to go this way with it because I need to look at these strips now because I know I've got strips here, and I want these strips to be even. So I take the first thing I do is I go to the first junction, and I want to make sure that my strips are even with each other before I pin it together. So then I got them even. And I'm going to pin. And as you do this a couple times, you'll get the hang of it. And I'm going to go look here. So see, here's the strip on one row, and here's the strip on the other. I want to make sure they match up. So I'm going to pull that back so I can see what I'm looking at. And I'm going to match those up. Because if you get them a little off, then everything's going to be crooked on the back and on the front. Okay? Then I'm going to take, now over here I don't have any junctions that I have to worry about, so I'm just going to take this. So when you have a row of like 20 blocks, it's going to take a little bit to get those all lined up. Let's put my pins in here. So put the pin over here. Okay. But that's the important part, is when you're pinning this on, make sure this strip, you can see the strips, make sure they're lined up and they're nice and straight, because then it'll be straight on the front as well. All right, so this is just like one big block. Now we're going to go back to the machine, and we're going to sew our 1/4 inch seam. Okay, second here. And there's the end. It's got a little triangle on it, so we'll have to kind of watch where the edge is there. Do our 1/4 inch seam. Get it started. Drop my needle. I think I'm going to pull this pin because it's kind of in the way. Do my 1/4 inch all the way down. Hopefully you can see me okay. That's one of those ones I'm always real careful. I don't like to pull those junction pins very well. That one was just, I must have got it in crooked, so I did pull it out. But those junction ones I don't like to pull out, because then if I do, everything scooches on me. Okay, make sure my strip is straight here. So I'm doing this just exactly like I did the blocks. It's just on a longer scale. Now, as you get going and these strips, or the rows get longer, whoops, sorry, my foot slipped on the foot controller. Got a little excited there, didn't we? When you start getting longer and longer rows, you're going to have to piece your strips together. Like the ones I'm working on now are 2 full strips, the width of the fabric for the length of the strip or the row. So it's pretty big. So you'll have to piece your strips together. And I piece them together like I do binding on the diagonal. But if you do them straight, that's fine. I've done them that way too. So when I first started working on these kind of quilts, I didn't know how to do that diagonal, so I just did them straight. Okay, so now we're going to pull this down, just like I did the blocks. And here's the second row put together. Okay, now we have to do the ironing, just like we did before. So here's both of the rows. So we actually have 3 rows because the little tail is the little triangle is sort of the 3rd row. Okay. So we're going to go back over here and we're going to do the ironing again, just like we did before. I tried to make it easy to move the camera, so hopefully it's okay. All right, so we're going to do the ironing again. And it's easier for me to work away from me, so I usually turn it the direction that I'm pressing my strips. So I'm going to press them down towards this corner here. So the first thing, remember the first step, we're going to press all of these nice and flat here. So these junctions together are nice and smooth before we start doing any other folding or anything. Hopefully you can see me okay. I have my back to my camera computer, so. Okay, so there's the first step, and then we're going to do this one as well. Let's pull this down. Get these all laid flat, and then we'll give them a press. Like that. Okay, so everything's nice and flat and smooth. Then, the second step, we're going to take the strip that's open, and we're going to flip it up. I kind of finger press it up. And then we're going to give this a press because we want these to have a nice crease where they're going to close. Like that. We want it to be a nice crease. Okay? So here's the first one. Here's the second one. We're going to do the same thing here. I'm going to bring it up and finger press it first. I'm going to iron it. Okay? So there's the 2 strips. Now I'm going to open the strip. Now when I'm doing a row that's longer than, what I do with the strips when I'm doing my 1/4 inch is I like to do about 1 block at a time. So I kind of turn my 1/4 inch back and I'm going to finger press it up to the junction of the next block. And that seems to work the best for me instead of trying to do all of it at once. So I'm just going to kind of get 1 block's width done, and then I'm going to iron this down like that. Whoops, except I missed. Let's try that again. This iron is still hot, yes, but I don't have as much trouble scorching my fingers with it, so this works better for me when I use my Euro steam iron. Okay, but I missed this little corner over here. There we go. Okay, then I'm going to go on to the next block, and I'll just finger press up that section like that, hold it down, and then I will press that section. And I'm going to do the same thing on the 3rd block. That one was a little hot. Woo! Woke me up. So how'd everybody do with the time change? Jan doesn't do very well with this time change. You guys doing okay with it? I couldn't go to sleep at the time I should have been asleep last night, so. Okay, so then I've got my 1/4 inch seam pressed in. Then I'm going to, give me a second here, we're going to do the same thing here. We're going to pull this one back. This one's not as long, so we're going to turn back our 1/4 inch, and it's about halfway, to the stitching line. Just going to kind of finger press it in. Like this. I'm going to kind of hold it down, and then I'm just going to press that down as well. Get a nice seam in there. There we go. Like that. All right. Now we're back to the I know, isn't it great? There's light. Mitzi said she just loves there's still light outside. Yeah, it's still light outside right now. It got really nice and warm today too. All right, so then we're going to go back to the tape. This is that Wash Away Wonder tape. We're going to put that onto the seam allowance on this side. Remember, I'm working away from me, so this is the direction of the bottom of the quilt. It just works better for me to do it this direction, and if it works better for you to do it the other way, whatever works for you. Okay, then we're going to do this one. Like that. It's easier for me to cut this. This doesn't like to rip too well for me, so we'll just trim it. Okay. Then we're going to put the strip onto the tape. So we're going to flip the strip over. Oh, Lynn got home. Oh, you got home just between 2 and 3 when the clock switched over? That's funny. So 2 became 3, huh? So I'm going to take this off, this one all the way off. It is pretty small, but how I do this often when I'm doing the really long rows, I'll pull off about 2 blocks worth of the paper and then work one at a time, but this is not very long. So, but then what I got to do is I have to pay attention to these, whoops, I got to put it up a little bit so you can see. I got to pay attention to these 2 strips. See, this needs to look like it's one strip, right? So if I need to pull it a little bit or alter it just a little bit, then I'm going to I always start at a junction. So like I'm starting in from the corner here, and I want to start at this junction because I want to make sure that these strip junctions are very even. So I'm going to start right here, and I'm going to make sure that everything's straight. I'm going to take this, pull this up, and I'm going to flip it over, and I want to make sure that it looks like it's one strip there. That looks pretty good. And then I'm going to work my way back this direction then, over to the outside. Put this up here. Oops. Jan's having a little trouble with this one. I can't see it. Hopefully, well, I might have to pull this down because I can't quite see. It's a little too far away from me. There we go. Okay, so I'm going to pull this up. I got a little boo-boo here, so I got to kind of take the tape loose and pull it up. Like that. Okay, and then I'm going to go to this other junction over here, and I want to make sure that one's very even. So sometimes you'll have, a lot of junctions, and it takes a little while to do this. So now I'm going to work between the 2 blocks here and make sure I got my strip in the right spot, and it's taped down like that. And then it makes them look very nice and straight then. Then I'm going to work on out to the outside edge here. But I work between the junctions. I do each junction, and then I work in between so that my rows stay nice and straight. Okay. Then I'm going to go ahead and iron this also. So we're going to take this again. The last step is we're going to iron this down. I don't always use the steam here. I often just iron it just to give it a little press down. Okay. And there's the first row to the second row. Then I'm going to go down here and get this one down here. We got to get this little guy down here. Do the same thing. Helps me to work from the underneath side of this tape. Then I'm going to, now the triangle, what I usually do in the corners is kind of go in the center and work my way to the edges then. Like that. Work in the center. I put a lot of these together. The original quilt was going to be that Dear Jane quilt, and I put together all of that quilt plus all of these, and I've done this several times. So I've kind of gotten a couple little tricks that work for me. And there is the corner of the quilt. Okay, I'm going to give this a little press as well. Okay, and there's our rows. So we have 2 rows put together, and now we have to do the zigzagging. So we're going to do the same thing we did with the blocks. Let me turn this back over. I'm going to go back to my number 1 tab and get my 1-10 zigzag. And I'm going to go back to my default settings of 3.5 and 1.4. And I always like to start with the open side. Now, lots of times when I'm doing this, I only have one opening. I only have one strip that I'm doing, like a really long row. Tonight I have two because I did both of them at the same time. I don't usually do that. I usually just do one row at a time just to make it easier for me. But tonight, with this one being so short, it was okay. So we'll go ahead and let's get these open sides first. So I'm going to smooth it out. I'm going to put that little notch right on the edge of the strip. Drop my needle. And we're going to zigzag across the open edge. Okay, and we're going to cut. Then we're going to do the same thing with the second strip. Okay, see if I got it all straight. I couldn't see very well. I had it with the camera between my arms and the edge. It's a little hard to see. There we go. Okay, so then we're going to go get this one. Put the needle down. I've got the notch right on the edge of the strip. And we're going to zigzag to the other end. Now as these get longer, it does get a little harder to do. You have to take your time and make sure you do the ironing. The ironing is very, very important. Because if you don't iron, you will have problems with your strips, especially when they're long. Keeping them straight. Okay. There's my two open. Now I got a little cockeyed on this one row, so I can adjust my row a little bit with my fingernail. Because remember, those are not really permanently stuck. This tape is actually water soluble, so when you wash them, the stuff will go away inside. Okay, but it looks pretty good. I've got a little spot right here that is a little bit off, but if I play with the seam a little bit, I think it's going to straighten out. It's looking better now. Okay, it's really hard to sew with a camera in front of you. I'm learning that it's hard to sew with the camera in front of you. Okay, then I'm going to flip these over and let's sew on the other side. We're going to sew down the other sides then and do the same thing. I like to do the open sides first and then the closed ones. Okay, oops, second here. Down the row. All right. And I'm going to do the second row as well. Oh, thanks for answering Terry's question, Judy. Haven't been able to answer yet. And we're going to do the other one. All right. Down at the end of that one. Then I'm going to get my little scissors and we're going to trim our little corners off here so that they're straight. And you can use your rotary cutter if you want to. Okay, whoops, get those out of the way. Let's do this side. And one last one. Okay, so this is the bottom 3 rows of the quilt. This is row S and T, and then the little triangle actually is the bottom row. And then I've got one more row that I sewed out that from the bottom that I'm going to put on, and it'll be up here. And it was row row R. So that one's going to have 3 piece blocks and 2 of the Celtic circles, and then the triangles on each end. So what do you think? Starting to look like the bottom of the quilt. And then we will, so that's, you just continue up the quilt. You just do one row at a time. What I would recommend to everybody is, don't leave all the blocks to the very end to do. Start putting some of it together, a little bit at a time, and then you can, it won't be so tedious. So that's why I've been putting mine together like one row at a time. I've just been sewing a row and putting it on, and then sewing a row and putting it on. And so the quilt's really pretty big right now. I've got a couple more rows. I have a couple more rows to put on for the first half. So I'm going to grab my quilt so you can kind of see it. I'll put the camera up here so you can see over here. And I'll hold it up for you so you can see it. And this is where I'm at so far. I've got a row on here ready to be zigzagged, so that's why there's stuff sticking out. But this is the row so far. Hopefully you can see it. This is where I'm at. This is the top corner. All right, and then I've got the last row needs to be zigzagged on yet. I got it all ready to go on. And then I'll show you what the rows those really long rows look like before I put them on. I've got a couple of those sitting here too. So I've got about the top half of the quilt done. And then here are some of these big long rows. So like this is a row. This is row like J. Let's see, this one's row. I have to look at it. This is row J or I. This is I. So this is row I. And row I goes up to the other top corner. So see, there's another one of those little tiny triangles on the other corner. So this is going to be the top right-hand corner of the quilt. And it goes, works down, and then there's another triangle on the other end. The other setting triangles on the other end. And then this is row J. So this is the middle row. This one here. And this one had the triangles, but one triangle's on one orientation and one triangle's on the other way. So when you get to some of these rows, you got to look to make sure you know which way the triangles go on, because they're flat against one side or the other, depending on what direction the quilt's heading. So you have to look at the picture real careful to make sure you get them on right. But this is the other row. So you can see I had a lot of little junctions here. So there's all these little blocks. There's like 9 piece blocks in here, and then there's 8 of the Celtic circles. So see all the little junctions? I've got them all sewn together. And then I've got the triangles on the other ends. And then I will put one big long strip. And I'll have to piece these, maybe even more than 2 of them. I think 2 will still work, but I might have to do 2 in a part of one to make the strips long enough to go on these, to sash the next row on. Okay? So these are the rows I'm working on. I'm going to try to finish these up tonight, I hope. We'll see how it goes. Okay. Are there any questions? This is all written down in the book. All this assembly is in the book. But I would recommend doing this. I'll put my camera on me so you can see me. But I would recommend doing, do a row, put it together, do a couple rows, put it together. It is a little tedious if you leave it all to the very end. Okay? Oh, Judy was telling everybody hers is going to have 2 to 3 rows of blocks of each. She's doing a king spread. So hers is really big. Now the standard size of starting over is around twin. It's not quite twin, but it's very close to a twin size quilt. So this one is going to be just a standard one, and it's going to be twin sized. Okay? So has anybody got any other questions? I'm going to turn my head this way so I can see if anybody has anything else. Okay? And please call me or text me if you have questions about about how this goes together. I took a lot of pictures in the book, so there should be lots of pictures there for you. Oh, the stitch length and width, Peggy, for the zigzag, it's 3.5 millimeters wide and 1.4 millimeters long for the zigzag. It's the standard on the Brother Baby Lock machines. I don't know what kind of machine you have, so I think I can't remember if you had a Brother or Baby Lock, but that's the standard length for that particular stitch. So, okay. Anybody else have any questions? That was a very good one. And your strips are 1 inch. You need a lot of them. What I've been doing, thanks, Lori. So a lot of them have been, they're 1 inch. And so like what I've been doing is I just kind of cut them as I go. I don't like to cut. So I didn't cut them all at the same time. I think you need about 100 strips. And there was a bunch of strips, 120. And so I just kind of cut them as I go. So I cut maybe, 10 at a time, and I put them on my Sizzix cutter so I can do a whole bunch. So I cut 10 or 20 at a time so I don't have to sit and cut for a year. So I don't like to cut very well. Okay, so this is going to be, I've got another row to put together. So this is my row, this is R. Here's row R. Let me see if I, oops, put this up here so you can see it. This is row R. So here's the blocks that I did for that row, and I'll do these probably tomorrow. I'd like to put these on so that the bottom parts of the quilt's going. And then I'll put the 2 halves together. So what I do when I do this is like this one. I'm going to turn this a little bit so you can see it. When I get this one, this is the bottom half of the quilt. So I'm going to put the bottom half of the quilt together and the top half of the quilt together. And then I'm going to put the 2 halves together at the very end. That way I only have to handle the whole quilt for 1 seam. You can, if you absolutely have to, you can start at the top and work all the way to the bottom, but then you're handling that whole quilt a lot. So I usually just do the bottom half and the top half, and then I just have to handle it 1 time through the whole quilt through the machine in the middle. So that's what I'm doing. This is the bottom, so I'm starting at the bottom now and working up to the top. So, okay. Any other questions? How long are your strips? Which strips? Mitzi? Oh, how it's looking, Jackie? Yeah, you'll have to watch the video a little bit. I just held it up so you could see it. How long are your strips? Which strips were you talking about? You mean the ones that I'm cutting? They're 1 inch by the width of your fabric. And then you may have to piece them when you get to those great big long rows. You're going to have to piece them when you go to put them together. The little strips are just, little short ones that you're putting the blocks together. Okay? So it's about 7:15. Now next month, I may end up adding an extra month in May, just because next month what we need to do is make sure there's no other comments here. Next month we're going to make a border block and then show you how to put the border blocks together. And I might make one last class in May just so you can see me put a border on, or if you want to see a border put on and some binding put on. I think the binding most of you have done before, so I think you'll be okay. But I may do one more class or just do a video of me doing the final border assembly. And the borders are put together differently, so we'll learn another technique for the borders next time. And then I'll stitch out one of the border blocks so you can see me stitch it and trim it, because those are also trimmed a little differently. So if you start your border blocks, make sure that you read the book carefully so that you have them trimmed carefully, because they are done differently than these blocks are. Okay? If you have any questions, you can give me a call, though. Okay? All right. Any other questions? Everybody okay? Anybody have anything else they need? So I'm going to leave all my stuff out. I think I'll eat supper and then I'll finish putting all these rows on that I have done. So be nice to have them all done and ready to go. Okay? All right. Looks like everybody's okay. So you can send me a text, and like I said, the tape, if you need the wash away window tape, I will have it at the store. I have some at the store already in Iowa City, so if you need some, let me know, and I can order more rolls. It's really fun. Thanks, Teresa. It's really going to be cute. I really like the pastel colors. It's very springy. I needed some spring in my life, so I made it very springy. So thank you. All right, everybody, have a good evening. And I will talk to you soon. And next week we will be doing, what will we be doing next week? What are we doing? We're doing, we don't have class next week. Jan gets a vacation day. So on the 15th, we don't have class. I'm sorry. So we will have class the following week, and we'll do Explore Club online. Okay? So we won't have class next week. I forgot I get a day off. Thanks, everybody. Have a good day. Talk to you later. Bye.